A swarm in Dungeons & Dragons is defined as a collection of fine, diminutive, or tiny creatures that act as a single creature. And I hate mosquitoes. Further, it states that a swarm has a single pool of hit dice and hit points, and that it makes saving throws as a single creature as well. GameMasters here, and that's what we saw as being the definition of swarm back in Dungeons & Dragons 3.5. In 4th edition, it took on a similar definition. A swarm is considered a single monster, even though it is composed of several tiny creatures. Those definitions were found in the back of the corresponding edition's Monster Manual's glossary. In 5th edition, however, the glossary was mysteriously removed, and there is zero mention of swarms. Yes, the 5th edition Monster Manual does present to us a few small examples of actual swarms. You've got the swarm of bats, swarm of insects, swarm of poisonous snakes, swarm of quippers, swarm of rats, and a swarm of ravens, I think it is. But what if I'm needing something larger? A swarm of zombies, for example. Yes, I'd refer to that still as a horde, but okay. What about a swarm of elementals? Or what about my need for a swarm of monsters that I want to throw at my players as they cruise through the multiverse on board their Spelljammer ship? Or what if I'm simply throwing my party into Candlekeep and need a swarm of books to attack them? I'll need more than a swarm of tiny little creatures, that's for sure. Unless, of course, they're mosquitoes. That's where this book comes into play. Created by Splinterverse, and I'll leave a link below where in the description where you can get this. This book will take you into a step-by-step process in creating a swarm. It's really to just kind of throw at your players. But what makes this even better is it includes right at 70 monsters as well as their swarm counterpart. That's 140 nasties that you can throw at your players. And as if that wasn't enough, each entry also includes its own adventure hook, making it super easy to include into your existing campaign. Because how this is all set up, you could easily create a one-shot adventure fully based on any one given monster found within. And that's what's super cool about this book. You get the formula for creating a swarm, 70 monsters, and 70 swarms, plus adventure hooks. I want to show you an example of one of the monsters and its swarm counterpart. I'm already working on my Halloween campaign. And I know it's a little ways off, but I like to plan it out in advance, really well in advance, so that as I drop subtle hints in games leading up to that event, the players will revel in the details. So in this past weekend's game, there was a pretty major battle just outside a deserted town. Now, the town had been deserted because the evil tyrant that ruled that area had his troops go in and remove by force everyone living there, and then proceeded to slaughter them one by one. One individual made it out alive and hired the players to help eradicate this tyrant. And they did. But I made it a point to emphasize that the land had soaked up a lot of blood. And this is why. They will end up returning to the area around Halloween, my players will, to discover the pumpkin jack. The pumpkin jack will grow forth from the ground, generally in soil under where murders have occurred. The more gruesome the murder, the more likely a pumpkin jack will appear. The pumpkin jack is filled with anger, taking on the negative emotion from the horrific murderous event that soaked the soil in blood to begin with. Battles fought with hatred have been known to birth an entire patch of pumpkin jacks, a swarm of pumpkin jacks. This is where the swarm comes in. Individually, the pumpkin jack has an armor class of 15, 12d6 plus 24 hit points, and has a challenge rating of 3. It has a strength of 12, a dexterity of 16, a constitution of 15, an intelligence of 7, wisdom is 10, and charisma is 15. It has regeneration, allowing it to regain 5 hit points at the start of its turn. However, if it takes fire damage, this will negate its ability to regenerate. It has a claw attack dealing 1d6 plus 3 slashing damage plus 2d6 poison damage, and can unleash a chilling cackle in which one must make a DC 12 charisma saving throw. On a failed save, you take 2d8 psychic damage and are frightened for 1 minute. The Swarm version of the Pumpkin Jack, an entire patch of them, sees it with an armor class also of 15. However, its hit points increase to 12d10 plus 24 hit points, and its challenge rating goes up to 5. Its strength increases to 16, dexterity remains the same, as does its constitution, intelligence, and wisdom. However, its charisma goes up to 17. Instead of regenerating 5 hit points, it regenerates 10, and it takes on the Swarm trait. Basically, it can occupy another creature's space and vice versa. The Swarm can move through any opening that the base creature could move through, like a singular version of it. The Swarm can now make 2 claw attacks, and the damage moves up to 2d6 plus 3 slashing damage plus 2d6 poison damage. If the Swarm is reduced to half its hit points, it's going to do 1d6 plus 3 slashing damage. Its cackle action increases up to DC 14 charisma saving throw, and on a failed save you would take 4d8 psychic damage. Earlier I also mentioned adventure hooks. The Pumpkin Jack's entry has 3. The first one, there is a murderer that has been hiding bodies in a field of flowers. Look at the flowers. Before I jump into the next two, I'd love to ask that if you're enjoying this video, to please give it a thumbs up. It really helps me to get it in front of more eyes, and I thank you kindly for that. Adventure Hook 2. A King's Death has created a Pumpkin Jack. The Royal Advisor is very well versed in what a Pumpkin Jack is and hires the party to investigate because he knows that the only thing that could create one would be if the king had been murdered. Adventure Hook 3 takes place shortly after 2 clans have waged war and spilled blood in battle. A swarm of Pumpkin Jacks have sprouted forth, and a third clan hires the party to dispatch the patch before it can wipe out those that are still among the living. We will soon see Mordenkainen Presents Monsters of the Multiverse release, or if you're watching this after the fact, it's already out. But if you're like me, there are never enough monsters. And with this book providing 140 new things to throw at my players, this is a no-brainer. If you'd like a copy, I've put a link to it below in the description. And if you'd like to see my massive playlist for Mordenkainen Presents Monsters of the Multiverse, you can check that out here. For me, having a concise formula for creating a swarm is worth the purchase of this book alone. I'll be making a swarm of zombies for sure. What type of swarm are you going to make? Let me know in the comments below, and until next our paths cross, may you not encounter a swarm of mosquitoes.